All right, so your mom and dad both end up here. They get set up. They get married. You guys have been here your whole life. What's it like growing up in Vegas, man?
It's really changed a lot. The Vegas I knew as a kid, it's not the same anymore. Obviously, the Strip is, the thing that people think about when they come to Vegas. But I remember when I was like 4 or 5 years old, like most of Summerlin was not built.
Right.
You would drive up to, let's say like Fort Apache, Rampart. There's like nothing out there. So just the growth of the city is crazy. Otherwise, I really think it's the same as any other places, minus the fact that it's super hot and there's no beach. But like the cousins I had in California, the cousins I had in New York, they would come here. They loved it here. I mean, I didn't think it was very much different than what everyone else says. I know some people say you can't raise kids here, but
right.
I don't believe in that at all. I think it's a great city, and I think now especially it's become a multifaceted city. There's so many things here that other cities have that we didn't have before. More culture, more recreation. More outdoor recreation too. I feel like they've really focused on making like walking paths, parks, all that kind of stuff. So I loved growing up here. I had no problem with it. I didn't look at people in other cities and be like, oh, I wish I grew up in California, or I wish I grew up in New York or whatever else.
Is it weird when you're like a teenage boy and there's like this huge party scene here and there's topless clubs and there's casinos? Like, is that in the back of your mind? Like, Definitely. I just can't wait to turn 21, Definitely. Or is it kind of like you just grow up with it? It's just part of what it is. There's
like a veil almost over it, and you're like, wow, I can't wait to pierce the veil. Like, see what's on the other side. Go to these clubs. Go to this. Go to that. Once you do it a few times, it's like, yeah, it's cool. I wasn't a huge club person. Like I went a lot in college because, what else are you gonna do? That's where everyone wanted to go. But there was definitely this like anticipation always, especially. There's a really funny stereotype about Israeli guys. They love to club and party and stuff like that. So
I did not know about this stereotype.
Yeah, they love. I mean, it's just like in Israel, obviously, it's not. I wouldn't say it's dangerous, but there are dangerous parts to Israel, and the life over there, it's more, it's more stressful. Let's say. So they make life a party over there because you never know what's going to happen, and they carry that back to America when they move here. And Israelis love going to the nightclub. So I would always hear from going to synagogue, talking to the Israeli guys, seeing cousins or whatever. Oh, you can't wait to go to this nightclub, Pure, this one, that. So once I finally got to it, I was like, oh, this is fun. But Israelis like clubbing more than I do for sure.
There you go. So sure, you're breaking the stereotype there. And then I know one of the things that my wife and I were looking about, when we were unhappy with the school system in LA, then we were looking up here. We picked kind of a hybrid homeschool / private school. It's the weirdest program ever. So we can be in LA, we can be up here. It doesn't really matter. The kids can or cannot go to school, depending on what we want. And then there's like a homeschool. What was it like going to school up here? Because I know notoriously the public schools here are not great.
Yeah, so I probably wouldn't be the best person to ask about this because I went to private schools my whole life. My parents knew that the public schools here were very suspect. And more of what I heard from people once I went to UNLV of like how suspect they were, I was happy that I actually did go to private schools. So I went to Jewish private schools until I was in 8th grade, and then I went to a school called the Meadows in Summerlin, which is it's a very good school. I mean, a really good education. Every kid in my graduating class went to college. Like that's a big thing that they push there. So from what I've heard secondhand, the public schools are tough, but I really didn't experience it because I was very fortunate enough to be able to go to private schools.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm a pretty much like free market, libertarian, capitalist absolutionist. And I'm like, oh, not surprising that Las Vegas of all places has some of the most amazing public or private schools. It's because the public schools kind of suck. And so the free market kind of steps in and does stuff. And there's,
there's a reason. It's because they don't charge.
What was that, Chris?
Sorry.
Man, we're getting all messed up this podcast. We'll be fine. Just more proof that we film it in my garage. So I mean, when we started looking at private school options, there's just like a plethora of options, which is nice, but unfortunate for the kids in public school. And it's kind of like, well, there's no state taxes. The property taxes are really low. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, exactly. The whole allure of coming here is that you can come here and live a great life with a nice house and, your money goes farther. But obviously it's because there's no taxes. So if they raise the property tax, if they enacted a state tax, less people would come here and it would impact the draw. But obviously the caveat to that is your schools suck. So you got to really kind of pick and choose why you're coming here and what you really, really want. Now, if you have the money, then you should definitely go to private school, in my opinion, because the level in which I was at in college versus a lot of kids that I met in public school, not that they were dumb, God forbid, but just you could just tell that the basics, the foundation was so much stronger in the schools that I went to versus some of the schools that some of my friends went to.
Yeah. I get this all the time from people. They're like, wait, you bought another house up in Vegas? Da, 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 da. And so we have to spend 181 days a year in Nevada so that there's no income taxes. And they're like, well, they get all worked up that I partially left California. And they're like, well, don't you, don't they still have homeless people and crime? And I'm like, yes, every big city has all those things. Literally. but they're not taking 15% of my money on income tax and property tax and whatnot to have those shitty problems. So I can spend my money where I want. And yeah, it's just funny because this keeps coming up, this like tax versus service. I'm like, well, you can live in LA where you pay all the taxes and you get none of the services. Yeah, and the public schools are still not that great. So yeah, I'm a big fan of keeping more of my money and then deciding where I want to spend it. So tell me, you went to UNLV, right?
Yeah, I went to UNLV.
So public college?
I went to. Yeah.
What was the experience like there? Because for people that have not been to Vegas before, UNLV is like 3 blocks from the Strip.
Yeah, it's literally right there.
So it's I don't know how I would have ever focused if I turned 21 in college and went to UNLV.
Yeah, so it was very interesting. So I remember my first week at UNLV was overwhelming because my high school was only like 250 kids. So I saw maybe 2,500 people walk into class my first day. Right, to see that many people all together and like just it felt like being a small fish in a big pond. I got used to it. Obviously, I really appreciated it. It helped me grow up a lot. But having the Strip in the background and having like the party city atmosphere, it definitely impacts it. I was a part of a fraternity, a Jewish fraternity, and we would obviously do our house parties and things like that. But once you turn 21 or once you get a fake ID, like everybody,
right,
you're going to the Strip. Right, there was a time in which everybody that we knew was clubbing, and you would go to the club like 3 times a week, and they had like locals nights, and you would go like Monday night to Marquee, you would go Wednesday night to Surrender at Encore, and then you would go Sunday night to a pool party or whatever, and you would do this for like 1 or 2 years literally until you got either tired of it or until the girls would start working at the clubs, the guys would start working at the clubs. But it was very impactful on the social scene. Like everybody you knew that was of age or of age with a fake ID was definitely clubbing. So
yeah, if I was at the club, and I know it gets cheaper when you're local and people hook you up, and it's not like what people are thinking. If you don't live here and you come into town for a weekend and this is your Super Bowl and you want to do all the fancy stuff in a 3-day window, you're going to spend a shit ton of money.
Yeah, literally.
If you're local and you know somebody that works the club and you got a buddy who's a host and you can go on Thursday night instead of Friday night, it's surprisingly cost effective to party in Vegas if you don't gamble and you're local. But there's no way I would have made it through college partying 3 nights a week.
There's some kids that couldn't handle it. There's really some kids that couldn't handle it. And the funny thing about the cost of it, obviously we didn't have the money, but we had the people. So if you could bring, let's say like 10 girls, you had your like 6 or 7 buddies and you knew 10 girls that would come with you, they hook you up with free drinks, free entry, free table or whatever it is. So that's how we got around it. We just knew so many people of age that could make it happen.
There's no chance I would have made it through college. I didn't make it through college as it was. I dropped out of Pasadena City College because I'm like, I like working more. But if I would have been in a school that had access to the level of partying and how will we say this, attractive young ladies that you'll find in Vegas,
and the debauchery.
And the debauchery, I would have never made it through. I would have been face down in the gutter. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for not moving here and sending me to UNLV. I would have been in big trouble.